quite early in life. And in fact, I'm wondering in terms of, it may not even be despite their loss. In fact, some of what Hope Edelman discovered in her book was that many women use this experience to go on and create a sense of success. I have some characteristics taken from her book that do help women create success. Let's take a look at a few. Okay, let's take a look at the first few. I don't think we could possibly memorize this entire list at once. Autonomy and personal power, the relaxation of gender barriers, and perhaps a need to work through grief. We'll start with those three in terms of women who may, as a result of their loss, may experience more sense of power and greater barriers around gender, traditional gender training. Have you experienced that working with women?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, the sense of when we have that kind of early loss, we sort of tap into some personal power that we may not have. We talked a little bit before the break about that.
Yes.
And that some of that may include, you know, maybe getting some different input about our gender. And maybe our expectations about our gender may be different.
I think there's a need to find something within ourselves because we feel that we can't get it anywhere else. And I think young women and even children will make a decision that mother isn't available, she's gone, dad's grieving, I've got to do this for myself. And then discovering that they can, to a certain extent, do it for themselves, gives them a sense of power.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know about the gender barriers. I think when we have a sense of power, we do tend to not feel that as strongly.
I think that's an important point, that the more powerful we feel, the more we feel as though we're willing to try things that may not have been traditional in terms of female upbringing, but that are even necessary around the household.
I think we don't have a choice, or feel that we don't have a choice. We must try.
Okay.
We must do it.
Okay.
Because mother isn't there to help us with it any longer. Okay. And the feeling is, as we said earlier, the isolation, the sense of isolation and the sense that nobody else can do it for us.
Right.
Nobody else is there for us.
Well, what I'm wondering as you say that is, what happens with a child, let's say a little girl who loses her mother around 8 years old and discovers the sense of power, and dad remarries and brings another woman into the household. What happens with the autonomy and power at that time?
A lot depends on the woman. If she's been careful and nurturing and friendly and helpful, maybe she can begin to, that child can begin to feel that maybe this is someone who can help her with things.
Okay.
But if there hasn't been that opportunity, the child can feel that her place is being taken in the home.
Okay.
She's taken over and she's doing all right, and now dad is bringing someone else in who will take her place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine there would be a sense of displacement with that if things weren't, if a relationship wasn't established in advance. On the other hand, I could see where it might be a relief to a child at some point to be able to go back to being a child.
Might be. Might be. It would depend on the child.
Yeah.
I think many youngsters, as they feel this sense of autonomy and a sense of succeeding in being more responsible and more grown up, find it hard then to go back to being the little child. It's too bad.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to go back to being the child sometimes.
I would guess not. That would require a great deal of trust. Now, sometimes they also mention there's a need to work through grief, that one of the things that may propel young women towards success is the need for working through grief, or the need for distraction, sort of maybe instead of feeling the enormity of my loss, I'll focus on achievement in some way. Maybe getting straight A's, or becoming president of the campus or something like that. When you work with women who've experienced early loss, have you met a fair number of successful and high-achieving women?
Oh yes, very much so. In fact, just the few who have called in so far to do this group have all been professional women, or in the business world. It's been very interesting, and the voices on the phone sound very self-confident, and yet here they are calling for support.
Okay.
And so there is that dichotomy.
Okay, so the people around them might be very surprised they were making such a phone call.
They might.
Okay.
If they knew.
Let's take a look at the next list of characteristics. Let's see, the need for distraction, the courage to journey alone, quest for immortality, even a desire to honor our mother. Now, it seems to me that the courage to journey alone would come partly out of that isolation factor you mentioned before, which is, well, I'm going to need to do this. No one's going to do it for me. What about immortality?
Oh, I think that comes up with any loss, any death-related loss. We are brought face to face with the reality, and our culture really doesn't encourage us to do that. So that when we personally experience that loss, then there is that, oh, yeah, this is real, this does happen. It happens to someone I know, and it could happen to me. And now what do I believe about this? Do I need to find some way of finding meaning in all of this?
Yeah, and maybe even feeling a sense of urgency about making our mark in the world. That because of that awareness of how temporary life is, then there's sort of a need, I would guess, a need to get on with it. Yeah.
Life is very impermanent and uncertain, and I better do what I need to do.
We had spoken at break, this next one about honoring the mother. One of our quotes had mentioned that, when you lose a parent early in life, you are in love with them for the rest of your life. That's sort of maybe sometimes idealizing a lost parent.
We want to do that. And there is the encouragement, again, in the social structure, to remember the good things and forgive anything that wasn't perfect. And we want to have this mother image that is perfect and beautiful and wonderful. And I think children, particularly young children, will, if they had a nurturing mother, they'll remember those beautiful, wonderful moments.
So part of achievement might be a chance to do this for her.
Yes.
Sort of a sense of, well, she can see me and she'll be proud of me.
And yes.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
And in fact, I imagine there's probably been times where children were actually told that your mother would have been proud of you, or make her proud of you. Let's take a look at the last three of our characteristics. Feelings of uniqueness, resilience and determination, and again, the desire to create meaning. In terms of this feeling of uniqueness, I know Miss Edelman had mentioned in her book that sense that a lot of the women she'd interviewed had never met another woman who had lost their mother, and yet there are so many women. Is it something that in general we're taught not to reveal about ourselves?
Oh, I think grief and loss are issues that we, even today, are still very reluctant to bring out and discuss. Okay. And we're not encouraged to do that. We're supposed to put on the happy face. Somebody says, "How are you?" and you're supposed to say, "I'm fine, thank you," whether you are or not. And so children and young women don't want to admit, this is supposed to be a happy time of your life. And to acknowledge that you have a grief and a loss makes you different. Yeah. And you don't want to be different.
Okay, so you grow up almost maybe with a sense of secretiveness about the degree of this loss.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Or, I can also, I don't know, but I could imagine that if your dad remarries very early, it may be that the people around you discount your loss. Sort of like, well, another woman came into the house, so your mom was replaced. In fact, I've certainly met a number of men who have wanted to remarry after a divorce or after a loss for the sake of the children, to provide, quote, a mom for their children.
That's right. And that works sometimes, and other times it's a very difficult situation. The assumption is that the family is whole again. Yes. But the child may still be feeling the loss very deeply.
Okay, so for that child, there's still that kind of outline of somebody. Yeah.
Mom isn't here.
Mom isn't here. And the idea of resilience and determination. Talk to us a little bit about resilience and what that might be about.
Well, if you are not going to be crushed by the loss, then you have to decide that you are going to stand and move forward and accept what's happened and get on with things. And that forces you to become resilient. It forces you to cope with whatever happens. Things come in and it's, but mother isn't here, but And there is that constant feeling, I think, with many young women, oh, if Mother were only here, but she's not, so I've got to do something. Right. And so you do.
And I wonder, I would think that on the outside, people would see, because people might see these women as very capable, they might wind up, in fact, doing a great deal of nurturing for other people, even though their own nurturing needs aren't being met. Has that been something you've seen?
That's another part of, I think, the grieving process. We find if we can nurture someone else, it feeds our sense of loss. It helps us to heal if we can contribute to someone else's healing, or if we can do something for other people. We encourage people who are grieving to reach out. That's what's so wonderful about support groups, because you're with other people who are experiencing the same kinds of pain you are. You not only identify with them, but you help each other. And there's a tremendous healing in being able to help each other.
I would imagine so, particularly being able to speak of something that maybe you've never spoken of really in 20 years. Even, you know, even amongst other family members. I mean, I know grief in general, we've certainly had people come from the Center for Living with Dying before here on Bay Area Psychology, and you know, we've talked about the fact that after 2 weeks, you know, it's just something not spoken of. Somehow the person is supposed to just sort of be okay with it. So I can imagine that probably even amongst family members, mother may not have been mentioned, amongst siblings or even from the father. And
you don't mention the depth of your feeling in a family situation because you don't want to create pain for the other family members, and there's the sense that they may not understand. We're not encouraged to talk about grief. We're encouraged to get on with our lives. It's over, it's done with. But it's not over and done with.
Well, and you mentioned briefly, and I want to hit on this before we close, that, you know, during that period of grief, father is also absent.
Yes, he's grieving.
Yeah, he's grieving. So there's, at that time, for that young woman, a dual loss.
Absolutely.
Which, even though he may be there physically in the house, he may not be able to be of a lot of service or a lot of support. So that would really reinforce that sense of resiliency. Fortunately, they have support groups like you're going to offer. And is there an age group? Can any woman?
No, any woman.
Any woman is
adult. It's an adult group, but any age.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you for being with us. Join us in the upcoming weeks as we look at high conflict divorce and dual diagnosis. I'm Mary Crocker Cook. Good night.